Hello, my most holy of followers. Welcome back to the Celestial Perch. Today I have a new build order, going over a more powerful slash kind of like meta build. I've been trying to improve my gameplay overall by watching either just let's plays, playthroughs, as well as like tournament play. So this isn't going to be 100% refined or perfect, but it should hold up against your friends or at least the AI. But let me know if you have any suggestions to do anything better or just adjustments to the build. I was looking to improve, but we can go ahead and look at the Viserion Directorate. Going over the idea of the build in general, it's more of a meta build, and it will seek to kind of use early aggression to take down our immediate neighbor and sort of snowball off that. Once we dive into the actual year 0 setup, I'll go into more of what we're looking to do with the build and how it's going to translate from year 0 to year 15 to year 30. And that's one more adjustment we're making with this basic build, is that instead of checking in at year 10 and 20, I'll check in at year 15 and 30, as well as, of course, the year 0 start. But without further ado, let's jump into the actual empire. So moving on to our government type, I'll try to make this as concise as possible, but I also want to go into enough detail that if you're planning on taking this into a multiplayer game with your friends, you can at least understand where the build is coming from and what it seeks to do. So starting with oligarchic, we get to choose our rulers every 20 years, as well as we have the ability to do emergency elections. That means that we can change our rulers for a cost of unity, and you can do this maybe right before a war if we're looking for a ruler that maybe has a benefit to ship build speed or just a warlike trait. As well as we get some extra faction unity gain. It's very easy to please the Fanatic Xenophobe faction, so extra 15% on top of that is pretty nice. Will help us go through the traditions a bit quicker. And lastly, the power of agendas can't be overstated here. It will just give us a flat bonus that's tied to each ruler, so you don't really need to do anything like a democracy, but you still get to choose your ruler, so relatively powerful there. Moving on to our civics, we've taken Technocracy. This will be kind of a linchpin of the build. Getting the science directors will help with our early game science production, as well as the research alternatives will mean that we won't have to take discovery to get the research alternatives benefit at the start of the game, and we can still go through text and search a lot easier. And the last thing to help us search through and rush down specific texts is that our expertise scientists are twice as likely to discover technology that falls within their field. So picking up someone with materials expertise or voidborn expertise will really just help us find the specific text that we need. Masterful Crafters is a very powerful, very meta civic, replacing our artisans with artificers who produce 7 consumer goods instead of 6. In addition, also some trade value, which just is actually energy. And every 3 industrial districts will grant us 1 building slot. This means that on our capital, for example, if we just build 1 industrial district, we get a city district, which we can use to build the research labs. As well as on our early consumer goods planet, we can fill those building slots with things like luxury residences to keep our housing and amenities up, and we don't need to build any city districts to actually build those. So overall, Masterful Crafters is quite good. Moving on to Fanatic Xenophobe. You can adjust your ethics as you desire. I like Fanatic Xenophobe as if you're just playing with your friends, the decreased opinion will not matter as much, and the ability to enslave and purge aliens is very nice. Indentured servants cost very little in the way of housing, as well as amenities upkeep. And then in addition, the Starbase influence cost will help us expand in the early game and get to vital choke points, as well as just the pop growth speed. The 20% here will help make up for the fact that we're not taking rapid breeders. But if you're playing in more of a competitive meta, you could drop this for regular Xenophobe and pick up something like Militarist. Of course, we've taken Materialist. This will lend us the academic privilege living standard, which we'll want to activate at the start of the game, and we'll get a little bit of extra research speed. Also, it's required to take that Technocracy, so we just kind of have to take it. Moving on to our species, intelligent and natural engineers. This will help us go through the tech tree a little bit quicker, as well as just get the most important techs, which are primarily in engineering. And Charismatic will help us maintain a higher amenities production, so we won't have to build as many amenities buildings, and just in general will help us throughout the game. Unruly, this is kind of just a necessary trait for any meta build. It's very powerful, very hard to understate that the downside here is not very much. And Solitary, this can be replaced with other things like maybe Deviant or Sedentary, but for this build I'm just using Solitary as we'll have enough housing and it really won't be much of an issue. For the last two things, I've taken Arid worlds because it will increase our chance of rolling generator districts, and you can take either Arid worlds, dry worlds, or frozen worlds, being stuff like Alpine or Tundra, because those will increase your chance of finding mineral districts. So those two are the best. Avoid wet worlds because you don't need more agricultural districts. And we've taken Prosperous Unification. This origin is in no way the best origin or a meta build. It's just a good stepping stone, and that's what I want this build, this basic build guide to kind of be, is a stepping stone towards if you're going for more meta play or a more powerful game, and maybe you're trying to get a leg up on your friends or at least catch up to them if maybe you're not as good of a player. But the reason why I'm not using something like Clone Armies or Necrophage or Teachers of the Shroud is those require a little bit more skill ceiling, just knowledge of the game in general, whereas this could be picked up by a new player, replicated, and played to some degree of success throughout the game, even if you are relatively new. It's still just taking advantage of the powerful civics, ethics, and traits within Stellaris. And Prosperous Unification will just assist you in that. There's really not much to manage here. But overall, that's the Empire. We'll jump into the settings here and go over those briefly, and then jump into year 0. So looking over the game details, I'm not going to go over these too much as I've done so a lot before in the other videos. I'm just going to slowly scroll through these, and you can copy the settings or adjust them as needed depending on your multiplayer meta or the requirements there, or just what your friends want to use. But this is what I use for now, leaving Iron Man mode on. No cheating will occur. We can scroll through and get ready to go to year 0. So we're here at year 0 with our entry screen. We'll press begin and get started. So looking at our year 0 start, there's a lot to go over, so we'll start with our government first. Check out what our ruler got as well as our agenda. So we got Industrialist, which will give us extra minerals, which is quite nice, and Space Miner, which will increase our mining station output and build cost. That's a pretty good combo right there. And National Purity is good. Some extra monthly influence is nice, and the Xenophobe ethics attraction isn't super useful, but you know, it'll help. We'll also want to change our policies to Isolationist. This will give us some additional monthly unity, and we'll change our economic policy to Civilian. The point of this is that on one of our worlds, we're going to be building up a lot of consumer goods, as much as we can, really. And then once we find our first neighbor and we have the necessary techs, we will switch over to an alloy militarized economy, and that will leave us with a negative deficit, which is why we need that surplus, or at least the stockpile for now. So that's all we really need to change here. And we can look at our edicts. We only have Fortify the Border, so we can run that when we want to upgrade our star bases once we find hydroponics farming. And the last thing is to look at our leaders. Our governor is not great. Unifier isn't great for this build, so we'll look for something like Architectural Interest. Try to snag that governor early. And for our scientists, we got 2 Spark of Genius, which is pretty good. We're also going to, as shown here, look for a Materials Expertise. That will help us find the Motes technology, which is required to get the Holographic Casts technology. We'll also eventually look for a Voidborn Scientist. They will help us find destroyers and cruisers. But for now, we don't have any unity to buy those guys, so we'll just leave them. And on our capital world, we're going to be working towards getting as many research labs as possible. But for starters, we'll just build one mining district. You can also build an energy district, which I think I might do, as we have quite a few energy districts available. So just at the start, it's one of those two districts. Build those two, and then we'll look to start filling up our research labs. And once those two are filled, we'll build an industrial district, which, as stated before, once we have 3, will give us an additional building slot. We'll fill that with a lab. And then once we've filled those out, we can start replacing our commercial zones with research labs as well. It's up to you if you want to remove your administrative offices and replace them with research labs. It will hit your Unity a bit hard, and you might want to consider maybe getting an admin office somewhere else to kind of shore up that loss. But for starters, that's it for the capital world. Of course, just, once you have the available funds, delete the sprawling slums, and once you need to or have the funds, we can remove the industrial wasteland as well. That should cover everything on our capital. In terms of shipyards, we can delete the trade hub and crew quarters at the start of the game. This will save us a little bit of Unity. And although we don't get any alloys from stripping and upgrading these, or, retrofitting them, we can also just disband them, as they currently cost us 3.52 energy per month, and they're not really going to do anything. And lastly, we'll want to go over our tech. At the start of the game, this is a pretty good role here. The global energy management is very powerful, but for now, we'll just pick up quantum theory. This is quite good as well. I think we'll go for genome mapping, and here we could pick up nanomechanics. I usually like to get these research from researchers early, as well as some pop growth speed early. When you can, just grab these, as they will help us go through the techs a bit quicker. And then, of course, we're going to want to expand to our Arid worlds as soon as possible. We found them over here. We have a size 25 and a size 17. Those are both good. So we'll start working towards getting our colony ships out as soon as possible. And the last thing to consider is that we want to use the market to maximize the efficiency of our expansion. So for starters, we'll create a 52 mineral trade. I'll put the monthly trade maximums here, as well as the selling maximums on the screen. But we'll create that. And I forgot the true last thing we want to go over is we want to change our species from decent conditions to academic privilege, as it will give us additional research, as well as some happiness from our rulers and specialists. Let's do that. And that should go over the basic year 0 start, and I'll check in around year 15 and give a brief update on how we're doing, what we're looking for, and where to go from there. So, checking back in at year 15, we can see here we have some good expansion going. We've been able to settle our 2 guaranteed habitable worlds, as well as another arid world we found. I'm going to go over kind of what I've been doing, where I want to go from here, and just kind of the general setup of, how I got here as well. So to start off, we'll just look at some of our planets. Our capital world, I've been just finishing out with tech. We've been able to remove all the features, or all the blockers, sorry, and fill all of these with research labs. The last one's coming in. We're a bit behind on tech. 474, year 15. You could easily be 500 plus if you were just a little bit more min-maxy compared to what I'm doing. As I've stated before, I'm not like a tournament level player, but if you're able to follow this build order to some degree, you should even be able to improve upon it. And I hope to be able to improve it as well in the future. But the capital, that's the dedication there. Keep in mind, we also have our Prosperous Unification bonus. Quite nice. That'll last us another 1,700 days. And we were able to pick up that architectural interest governor to reduce the building cost and district cost, as well as increase the building speed. You can, once you've completed all of these, swap this guy out with a intellectual governor if you can find it. I have not been able to find one yet. For our second larger world, we've set it up as a factory world. We've picked up a lot of artificers. 12 out of 14. I was able to reshuffle some jobs here, so remove the farmers. And in fact, at this point, you could probably just demolish these, as they're basically worthless. But we've been able to move some jobs to this factory world to support our consumer goods. Depending on your start and your origin, you probably will even be able to have more consumer goods than this at this point, maybe somewhere even closer to like 8,000. But by the time we start attacking, we should have enough consumer goods surplus that when we switch over to our alloy economy, that we should be able to support our economy long enough to actually win the war. And our last planet, this one happened to have a lot of generator districts, so I threw in a energy grid as well as an admin office so that we don't have to work the colonist jobs, and we can instead just work bureaucrats, help us get through our Unity production. And next, speaking of Unity production, we'll go over our society management. I've gone through Prosperity. As I stated before, we don't really have to go down Discovery to get the extra research alternatives, so just the early game economy bonus here is, in my opinion, essential. And getting that extra mining station output, as well as the district build cost and build speed, as well as just some other small benefits like specialist pop resource output and some upkeep from jobs will help reduce our mineral demand on all of these consumer goods jobs. Yeah, here we're just going to go energy, and on our last planet, this could maybe be like our backup consumer goods world once we switch this one over to alloys. But for now, that's kind of our just general expansion. And one other tip that I could recommend is that you might notice I only have 3 science ships, and for the first couple of years of the game, I only actually had 1. That's because your alloys at the start of the game are very, very important, and we're going to want to use those to get our first 2 systems, as well as build the colony ships as soon as possible and sell those as soon as possible. If you can, you should try to have those both settled, or at least have the colonies being developed by year 5. And that can assist you in doing that. But the last thing to go over in what I've been doing is just our tech. So in terms of our tech, for what we've researched so far, looking at engineering, we've gotten our alloy megaforges. We actually got improved strikecraft as well. We've picked up our ceramo metal materials for some better armor, better coil guns, and as well we've picked up some good early game economy techs, like powered exoskeletons, assembly patterns, nanomechanics, and these are just the starting techs over here. But we've been able to pick up these, and that's pretty good. The main ones we wanted to look for were both carrier operations and holographic casts. Now, keep in mind that to get holographic casts to actually show up, even if we have a materials expertise scientist, which we did, we need to have, within physics, volatile material plants, because we need to actually have moats to be able to build it. So on our next world, we're going to build some moats, and then we can buy some moats and just actually build the upgraded alloy megaforges. So you will want a particles physics researcher. I, for the life of me, could not get one. I even rolled down a bit to see if I could find one and just kept getting stuff like this, where, meticulous, adaptable new worlds. So sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. I at least got both the good, I got a Voidcraft and a materials scientist, so that was great. But sometimes, Spark of Genius is fine. But that's an important tech to get. And then, of course, there's other ones like quantum energy states. This one, global energy management, is very nice. Getting our capacity subsidies. Just one thing to go over, of course, from the traditions that I missed. Executive Vigor will give us extra edict fund, which will allow us to run capacity subsidies, which will increase our technician output. And if we look quickly at the market, we can see, we're buying 52 minerals. We're selling a bit of... we were selling some alloys to prop up our economy for a bit. I found a anomaly, super lucky, gave me some throw, so we're just selling that for energy. We can actually reduce this by 6. And I was just buying some extra consumer goods to continue to build up that surplus. But from here, we do have our neighbor, so we're going to want to get our cruiser and destroyer technologies as well as Starhold as soon as possible. Buff up these stations. On our stations so far, we've filled them with hydroponics bays to get us extra food, which is why we only have to buy a bit of food. And, if you're playing a little bit better, probably should get some of these upgraded as well to get some more hydroponics bays and we can start selling some food for extra money. But these guys are very aggressive. They tried to kill one of my scientists. So we'll want to fortify Sigma Draconis, and eventually, once we have the holographic cast technology, flip this over to Alloy, build up a ton of ships, build this system up into a starbase, fill it with hangar bays, declare war, and hopefully attempt to bait him into a good fight, and then just take him over from there. But that's kind of the gist of the build, and we can check in at year 30 to see how it's gone. So checking back in at year 30, well, 31, I got a bit carried away and kind of just accidentally forgot to check the time. So it's year 31, but as you can see, we're doing pretty well. We did end up meeting our neighbor over here. He is a xenophobic isolationist, if I'm not mistaken, or hegemonic imperialist. And we went to war with him and were able to successfully bait him into a pretty terrible engagement by our hangar base station here. And he lost that pretty decisively. And with our 2 fleets, we have a fleet over here of 8 cruisers, soon to be 10. We have 2 more on the way. And then over here, we have 15 destroyers and 20 corvettes. Just kind of split. We stacked them, of course, when we were fighting, but then I was able to use the corvette destroyers to chase down whatever reinforcements he had and destroy those. And we've taken over Sol, which has 41 pops. We've also grabbed this planet over here, which has 15. And we're working on his capital now. We should be able to take it over, just bombarding down this last army, and then our 234 army should be able to win. And that should close up the war. I think he'll be left with 1 or 2 planets after that. I haven't fully explored down here, but that's looking pretty good. We're making a good amount of alloys every month. Probably could increase this a bit. And actually, we're not losing as many consumer goods as you'd expect. As soon as we can get this upgraded from planetary capital, that should also help. And upgrading this to a planetary administration. And then this planet has just been to kind of assist with our volatile moats, as well as just shoring up those consumer goods. We've been able to produce 89 food from our star bases, which is propping up our food economy. And of course, we're still buying our minerals so that we can continue to develop our economy. Over here, we happen to find a very lovely hive mind empire, and they are not happy with us, very suspicious. So, took the system over here and threw in a star fortress, a few defensive stations, and it's chilling at 10.8k. So that should deter him from attacking us, or at least give us enough time, if we had to draw these fleets back and start going after him. But for now, we can turn this advantage here with our alloys and our fleets to just kind of basically wipe out our neighbor to the east. And maybe with what's left of him, we could vassalize whatever after this war within the next, and then turn our eyes towards this hive mind over here. Both of these happen to be Arctic preference, so we can eventually take over the hive mind, wipe out those pops, and then move some of our pops from over here. If we have any excess pop, put it over here and start filling those up. But, you know, if we had happened to have gone Arctic, that would have been pretty nice. Still, you know, we're producing a lot of alloys here. We're producing a lot of tech here. And as soon as we can find the upgrade to these tech buildings and we end this war, we'll start to repair our economy and try to just kind of snowball from here. But as you can see, you know, even on Grand Admiral, you should be able to use this build effectively to wipe out an early neighbor and kind of snowball off that. And if this is multiplayer, you just have to imagine that depending on your friend's skill level, this build will vary in effectiveness, but you can adjust it as needed and obviously, you know, continue to improve little minor things. You know, I probably should have some more alloy production and maybe a bit more tech as well, somewhere within 700 to 800. But 600 tech by year 30 isn't too bad. You know, we were able to get around 400 tech by year 15, I believe it was. So overall, we're doing pretty good, and this build should work out for most people. But thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this kind of like meta, more stronger, powerful build, and have a blessed day.